Everyone talks about investing, building credit scores, and maximizing returns, but almost nobody talks about the actual power of just having cash sitting in your account. Real money that you can access right now without selling anything, without waiting for approval, without jumping through hoops. It's like cash has become the embarrassing cousin of personal finance that nobody wants to invite to the party. Here's why. Keeping substantial cash reserves might be the most powerful financial position you could possibly be in, and I'll show you the math that proves it. My name is Apex, and I help people understand psychology and mechanics behind building real wealth. If you ever felt like you're doing everything the experts say, but still feeling financially stressed, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that like button if this video changes how you think about money. Here's why this matters. Most financial advice optimizes for numbers on a spreadsheet. Higher returns, lower fees, maximum compounding. But numbers on paper don't equal power in real life. Think of it like having a PhD in nutrition versus actually being healthy. Knowing the optimal strategy doesn't help if it leaves you stressed and trapped. Real wealth isn't just about net worth. It's about options, freedom, and the ability to act when everyone else is frozen. First, cash gives you power during chaos. Everyone talks about buying the dip and being greedy when others are fearful. But here's what actually happens during market crashes. Most people can't do anything about it. Their money is already invested, probably down 30 to 40%. They're too scared to sell at a loss. They're getting margin calls or watching their portfolio bleed. The last thing they can do is come up with fresh cash to invest. They're paralyzed. But the person with substantial cash reserves, they're shopping. They're buying assets at 50 cents on the dollar. They're picking up rental properties from desperate sellers. They're acquiring businesses that are temporarily struggling but fundamentally sound. They're making deals that will define their wealth for the next decade. This isn't theory. This is exactly what happened in 2008 and 2020, and it'll happen again in the next downturn. Let me make this concrete. Let's say you kept $200,000 in cash for years. Your friends constantly gave you grief about it. They'd calculate how much you were losing to inflation. They'd show you charts of what that money could have become in index funds. They'd mock you for being too conservative. Then 2020 happened. Markets crashed 35% in a month. Everyone was panicking about jobs, businesses, mortgage payments. Meanwhile, you were calm, not because you enjoyed watching others suffer, but because you had options. You had power. You had cash. While everyone else was in survival mode, you went shopping. You bought stocks at incredible discounts. You picked up a commercial property from a panic seller at 40% below market value. 5 years later, that $200,000 in cash that everyone mocked had turned into over $800,000 in assets. But more importantly, you never felt stressed or trapped during one of the most chaotic periods in modern history. That's the difference between being technically rich on paper and being actually powerful in real life. Second, cash gives you walk-away power. This is the most underrated benefit that absolutely nobody talks about. How much would your life change if you had 2 years of expenses sitting in cash right now, not invested in stocks that you'd have to sell at whatever price the market offers, not in real estate that takes months to liquidate, just cash that you could access tomorrow if you needed it? Suddenly, that terrible boss doesn't seem quite so intimidating. That toxic work environment becomes tolerable because you know you could walk away tomorrow. Those unreasonable demands from clients become negotiable because you are not desperate for every dollar. When you have substantial liquid reserves, you can afford to walk away from bad situations, bad jobs, bad business deals, bad investments, bad relationships. Most people stay trapped in terrible situations not because they want to, but because they can't afford to leave. They need the next paycheck. They can't risk the instability. They're financially handcuffed to their circumstances. But here's where it gets really interesting. This walk-away power doesn't just protect you from bad situations. It actually attracts better situations. When you're not desperate, people can sense it. Employers know you're choosing to work there, not trapped there, which paradoxically makes them value you more. Business partners know you don't need to deal, which gives you better negotiating leverage. Even in personal relationships, not being financially dependent changes the entire dynamic in healthy ways. I've watched this play out over and over. The people with the most financial stress are usually the ones making the most money, but spending every penny to maintain an impressive lifestyle. They're trapped by golden handcuffs, unable to make any changes because their expensive life requires their expensive income. Meanwhile, someone earning half as much but keeping substantial cash reserves has infinitely more freedom and power. They can take risks. They can try new things. They can walk away from anything that doesn't serve them. Third, opportunity cost works both ways. Everyone knows that money sitting in cash loses purchasing power to inflation. $1 today won't buy as much in 5 years. This is the main argument against keeping substantial cash reserves. But here's what they conveniently forget to mention. Investments also have costs that nobody wants to talk about. First, there's market risk. Your portfolio can lose 30, 40, even 50% of its value in a matter of months. Sure, it usually recovers eventually, but what if you need that money during the down period? What if that job loss or medical emergency happens when your portfolio is down 40%? Suddenly, you're forced to sell investments at the worst possible time, locking in losses that would have recovered if you just had cash to cover the emergency instead. Then there's the less obvious cost. Opportunity cost works both ways. Yes, cash sitting idle might miss out on investment returns, but money locked up in investments also misses out on cash opportunities. That rental property selling for half price because the owner is desperate. You can't buy it if all your money is in stocks. That business opportunity that requires immediate capital. You can't participate if you're fully invested. That chance to help a friend or family member in a way that would strengthen important relationships. Not possible if you don't have liquid resources. The math here is simple but profound. Missing a 10% annual return on $100,000 costs you $10,000 per year in opportunity cost. But missing out on a single once-in-a-decade opportunity to buy an asset at 50% off could cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars. Which loss is bigger? Everyone focuses on the steady, predictable opportunity cost of holding cash. Nobody calculates the massive opportunity cost of not having cash when you need it most. Let me show you two different scenarios. Careless Carl has $150,000 fully invested in a diversified portfolio. He's done everything right according to conventional wisdom. When the market crashes, his portfolio drops to $90,000. He needs $30,000 for an emergency, which forces him to sell investments at the worst possible time. That $30,000 he sold would have been worth about $120,000 just 5 years later if he'd been able to hold it. Total damage. He lost $60,000 in value. He could have recovered. Plus, he missed a rebound on those shares. Total cost easily $80,000 to $100,000 when you account for loss recovery gains. Rich Richard kept $50,000 in cash, which his financial advisor constantly criticized. When the same emergency happened, he used his cash reserves, left his investments alone, and they recovered fully. Even better, he used another $20,000 of his cash to buy stocks at crash prices, which tripled in value over the next decade. Same emergency, completely different outcomes. All because one person had cash and the other didn't. Fourth, cash isn't defense, it's offense. This is something that changes how you should think about cash reserves entirely. Cash isn't just about emergencies or safety nets. Cash is your opportunity fund. Cash is what allows you to play when everyone else is sitting on the bench. The wealthiest people understand this instinctively. They don't see cash as dead money earning nothing. They see cash as loaded weapons waiting for the perfect target. Warren Buffett, probably the most successful investor in history, regularly keeps tens of billions of dollars in cash. Not millions. Billions with a B. His company, Berkshire Hathaway, often holds $100 billion or more in cash and cash equivalents. Does Warren Buffett not understand opportunity cost? Does he not know about inflation? Of course he does. He keeps massive cash reserves specifically because he understands something that most people miss. The best investment opportunities require cash, and they appear when everyone else is broke. Every market crash, every recession, every crisis creates incredible opportunities for those who have cash to deploy. But those opportunities only exist because most people don't have cash available. If everyone had substantial reserves, there'll be no distress sales, no panic selling, no deals to be made. The power of cash comes specifically from the fact that most people don't have it when they need it most. This is a hidden truth about wealth building that nobody wants to explain because it sounds too cynical. Other people's lack of liquidity creates your opportunities. Now, let's talk actual numbers. How much cash should you keep? The standard advice is 3 to 6 months of expenses for an emergency fund. But that's not what I'm talking about here. 3 to 6 months is your basic safety net. It keeps you from going into debt when your car breaks down or you lose your job. What I'm describing is something completely different. I'm talking about keeping enough cash that you could actually do something significant with it if an opportunity appeared. For most people, this probably means at least 1 year of expenses in cash, ideally closer to 2 years. On top of that, you want what I call an opportunity fund. This is money you're specifically keeping liquid, not for emergencies, but for opportunities. How much? That depends on your situation. But think about what kind of opportunities you want to take advantage of. If you're interested in real estate, you need enough for a down payment. If you're thinking about starting a business, you need startup capital. If you want to invest during market crashes, you need substantial investment money. I can already hear the objections, but that's way too much cash. I'm losing so much money to inflation. I need to be invested to build wealth. Okay, let's do some actual math instead of just repeating what everyone says. Let's say you keep $100,000 in cash, earning basically nothing. With 3% inflation, you're losing about $3,000 per year in purchasing power. That sounds terrible until you consider the alternative scenarios. Scenario 1, you're fully invested. The market drops 30%. You have an emergency and need to sell $30,000 in investments. You've just lost $9,000 to the market drop. Plus, you've locked in losses on investments that would have recovered. Total cost easily $20,000 to $30,000 when you account for loss recovery gains. Scenario 2. You keep cash and an incredible opportunity appears. You deploy $50,000 at a 40% discount to fair value. You just made $20,000 to $30,000 or more, potentially much more if it's a truly great opportunity. Scenario 3. You keep cash. You maintain psychological peace and walk away power for an entire decade, making better decisions because you're not operating from fear. What's that worth? Probably more than any investment return. The point isn't that you should never invest. The point is that being fully invested isn't automatically the right answer, just because that's what everyone says you should do. There's a balance, and that balance probably includes more cash than conventional wisdom suggests. Fifth, cash allows you to be patient with your other investments. When you know you have substantial liquid reserves, you can afford to be truly long-term with your investments. You never have to sell stocks at a bad time because you need money. You never have to liquidate real estate during a down market. You can hold everything as long as it takes for your thesis to play out. This patience alone probably adds several percentage points to your annual returns by avoiding forced selling during downturns. Think about how most people actually behave with their investments. They panic and sell during crashes. They chase returns during bubbles. They make emotional decisions based on their current financial stress. Why? Usually because they don't have enough cash reserves. Every market movement feels like an emergency. They're not investing with money they can afford to lose or let sit for decades. They're investing with money they might need next year, which means every downturn becomes a crisis. Compare that to someone with 2 years of expenses in cash plus an opportunity fund. They can watch their portfolio drop 40% and feel nothing, maybe even excitement because they know they can add positions at lower prices. They're not checking their account balance every day, stress eating about market volatility, or lying awake wondering if they should sell. They have the luxury of patience, which is arguably the most valuable trait in investing. Quick sanity check on what this actually looks like. Let's say your monthly expenses are $4,000. That's $48,000 per year. 2 years of expenses means you need $96,000 in cash for your extended emergency fund. Add another $50,000 as your opportunity fund. That's $146,000 total in cash. Now, let's say you also have $200,000 invested in index funds and you own a rental property with $100,000 in equity. Your total net worth is $446,000, but $146,000 of that, roughly 33%, is sitting in cash earning basically nothing. Financial advisors would tell you you're crazy. They'd calculate that you're losing $4,380 per year to 3% inflation on that cash over 10 years. That's $43,800 in lost purchasing power. Sounds terrible, right? But here's what that cash actually bought you. Complete psychological peace for a decade. The ability to sleep well regardless of market conditions. Walk-away power from any bad situation. The ability to buy during the next crash when assets are 50% off. Protection from forced selling during downturns. Better decision-making because you're not desperate. What's all that worth? Way more than $43,000. Careless Carl saves at $43,000 by staying fully invested, but he loses $80,000 when he's forced to sell during the next crash to cover an emergency. He misses another $100,000 in gains by not having cash to buy during that same crash. And he stays trapped in a job he hates for 5 extra years because he can't afford to take any risks. Total cost, hundreds of thousands in lost opportunities, plus years of unnecessary stress. Rich Richard keeps his cash. He loses the $43,000 to inflation, but he makes $200,000 buying during the crash. He switches to a better job that pays $20,000 more per year because he had the runway to take that risk. And he sleeps well for an entire decade. Net result, he's hundreds of thousands ahead and infinitely more peaceful. Here's a psychology shift that matters most. Having substantial cash reserves actually makes you a better investor and better business person overall. When you're not desperate for returns, you can afford to be selective. You can wait for truly great opportunities instead of settling for mediocre ones. You can walk away from deals that don't meet your standards. You can negotiate from strength instead of weakness. The times when you make the best financial decisions are always when you have plenty of cash reserves. You can think clearly, evaluate options rationally, and make choices based on logic rather than fear. The times when you make the worst decisions are always when you're cash poor. Even if you're investment rich on paper, desperation makes you stupid, and lack of liquidity creates desperation. Let's shift gears. Here's what the financial industry doesn't want you understanding. They make money when your money is invested with them, not when it's sitting in your checking account. So, the entire system is designed to make you feel guilty about holding cash. Every article tells you to stay fully invested. Every calculator shows you how much you're losing to inflation. Every advisor pushes you to maximize your invested assets. But the wealthiest people I know, the ones with real power, not just impressive net worth on paper, they all understand what I'm telling you. They keep substantial cash reserves because cash is the most powerful financial tool there is. Cash is options. Cash is freedom. Cash is the ability to act when others can't.